Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'm taking a look at Omerta by Helvetiq Games. It's a game designed by Adrien Dumont and Timothée Rignol. It's a game for 3 to 5 players for ages 10 and up, which plays in about half an hour. It's a quick card game, there's some memory involved and there's some take that involved as well. And before I start teaching how to play the game and sharing my thoughts on it, I'd like to ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because that really helps the channel. And if you'd like to support what I do, there's also a Patreon page in the links below, and you can support me for as little as just €1 per month or more, and that is also greatly appreciated. And in return, you will get your name in the credits, access to some Patreon exclusive videos, and also early access to all of my videos. All right, let's open up the box and set up a game. To set up a game of Omerta, take these character cards and take a number of cards equal to the number of players, but make sure to include Al Capone. So if you're playing a 3-player game, simply remove 2, take these cards and then randomly deal them to the players, and Al Capone will be the starting player. Next, take the rest of the card, give that deck a good shuffle and place it somewhere in the middle of the table within easy reach of all the players, and then deal every player 4 cards. So just deal them out one by one until everybody has 4 cards. And also create the safe, which you place in the middle of the table, that also has 4 cards. And all of these cards are kept face down. You don't look at the cards in the safe nor the cards that are dealt to you. Then every player secretly looks at 2 of their cards. You get to pick which one. So for example, if I want to look at this one, I take a look, that's a number 1, and I take a look at this one, that's a number 4. And you try to remember what those cards were and where they are in your hand. And after you've done all of that, you're ready to play, so let's explain the rules. There are 60 cards in the deck. 40 of those are bottle cards with numbers ranging from 1 to 10, and there are also 20 character cards in the deck which have special abilities. Now, on a player's turn, you will do the following. You will draw a card from either the draw deck or the discard pile. At the start of the game, obviously, there won't be a discard pile yet, but so the first player will always draw from the draw deck. But so you can do that. So let's say I draw a card. You secretly look at it and then you decide what you want to do with it without showing the others. So you can either swap it without looking at your cards with one of the cards from your hand and then play that card to the discard pile, or you can play the card you just drew and play that to the discard pile. If it is a character like this one, you will trigger its special ability. In this case, it's the safe cracker. This one lets me look at the cards in the safe right there, that's in the middle of the table, and then I can exchange one of those cards with one of the cards from hand, again without looking. But I will explain all of these characters later. So for example, if I played this, and I think I might want to use this later, then I can flip it around and then pick one of my cards to play to the table. Now I've already looked at my cards. This was a 1 and this was a 4. I may want to keep those for now, so I'll just see if I want to play this one. So for example, I'm just going to blindly play this one, and this is also a character. So when that happens, this card gets played into that slot. And this is the mole, and the mole lets me look at one of my cards. So you immediately do that action. So the only card at the moment I don't know yet is this one. So again, I secretly look at what this is, and this is a 5. So I now know all of my cards. And the goal of the game is to have as least possible points, because we are all gangsters in 1919 in America during the Prohibition, and we cannot have any stashes of alcohol anymore. We need to get rid of them. And so the goal is to try and get a maximum of 7 points from all of the cards in your hand. So as you've seen, all these bottle cards have points on them, and characters will have points on them as well. So these characters are all always, you know, a high number, a high value. So you're trying to get rid of those and trying to keep the lower cards in your hand. So at any point, if you think you have 7 or less points in your hand, then at the start of your turn, before drawing a card from either the draw deck or the discard pile, you can shout Omerta, and that means every player reveals their hand, and then the player with the least number of points will win that round. So if the player that calls Omerta has 7 or less bottles, 7 or less points in their card, then they win the round and they get 0 points. The other players will simply add up all of their points and note them down. But if another player has even less than 7 points, then that player scores 0 points. But then the player who actually called Omerta might have 7 or less points, but not the least points of every player. So they get the number of points they have, which might be 7, whatever, and an extra penalty of 20 points. The same applies if they do not have less than 8 points in total. So if they have 8 or more, then they also get that 20-point penalty because they were wrong. If there is a tie between the player who calls Omerta and another player, then the player who called it still gets 0 points and the other player gets their score as usual. You play as many rounds as there are players, and at the end the player with the lowest score wins the game. And that's all there is to it. Very simple rules, but let's have a look at all of these character cards and what they do. So as we've seen, the bottle cards are simply worth points, but these character cards are also worth points, which are listed in the top left of the card here, but they also have a special ability which is triggered when you play one of those cards to the discard pile. There are 3 gangsters in the game, and the gangster will let you exchange one card with another card that's on the table, not in the safe though, but from other players' hands, without looking at them. So you can either exchange one of your cards with one of your adversaries, or you can exchange 2 cards owned by your adversaries. The lady lets you shuffle an adversary's hand without looking at the cards, so rearranging the order they were in. We've already seen the mole, and that one simply lets you peek at one of your cards and put it back in front of you. And there are also 3 of these and 3 of these in the deck. There are 2 snitches in the game, and this one lets you give 2 cards from the draw pile to other players. So you can either give them to the same player or 1 card to 2 different players. Then there's the driver, which is worth 20 points, just like the snitch. There's 2 of those in the game as well, and that lets you discard 2 of your bottle cards, or 1 if you choose to, so it's up to 2 cards, but they need to be bottle cards. If you wrongly discard a character card from your hand, because again you can't look at those cards, you have to remember what they are, then you have to take the discarded cards back if they weren't bottles, and you have to draw 1 extra card as a penalty. We've already seen the safe cracker. There's 2 of these in the game as well. It's worth 15 points. This lets you peek at the 4 cards in the safe and then exchange one of those cards with one of your cards without looking at it, and you exchange that into the safe. And next there is 1 killer card in the game, which is worth 15 points. And this killer, you basically need to remember where it is in your hand, because again they are all face down. And it can be played to stop either the snitch, the lady, the gangster, the mama, and the police patrol. If one of those cards is used against you, you just have to reveal the killer and counter it. But you have to be sure that that is your card. And both cards are then simply discarded. The witness doesn't do anything. It's just an annoying card you need to get rid of. It's worth 10 points. But the alibi, there's also only one of these in the game. The alibi is worth 0 points. So that is a great card to have, and it is very important to remember where it is. If somebody else has this card on their hand and you saw that happen, make sure to remember that to try and get that one. And you also want to make sure not to accidentally discard this one from your own hand, of course. Then there is the Mama. There is one card in the game of this one. It's worth 15 points, and you can give this to another player when this card is played, and then that player puts this card in front of them for 1 turn because they cannot play for 1 turn. And they cannot declare Omerta during that turn, draw any cards, discard any cards, but the other players also cannot target these players, so they can't shuffle their hand or give them more cards. And then finally there's the Police Patrol, also one card in the game, which is 15 points, and you put that card on another player's card, and then that specific card is blocked for 2 turns, so you can turn it around once and then another time to keep track of that. And the blocked card cannot be exchanged, looked at, or discarded. And if a player receives the patrol card and only has 1 card left, then that player draws a card and discards it straight away, repeating this for 2 turns. And note that if one of your cards is blocked by the police patrol, you can also not call Omerta. Now, these 2 cards are discarded after either 1 or 2 entire turns, right after the player who placed that card draws a card, which means that that player cannot draw it and play it again. Should a player call Omerta when you have been given one of these 2 cards, then do not add it to your score, because they are not in your hand. They were basically just played to you from another player, and they are only temporary. And that's it. Those are all the rules for playing Omerta. Let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on Omerta by Helvetiq. Let's start with the components. Basically, all you get is this small box, which is a very sturdy cardboard box, very nicely done, very compact, with a bunch of cards. And the cards are nice and big and of a normal standard quality. They're pretty good. They have a glossy finish and they just look good. The artwork is all right. I'm not a huge fan of this style of artwork. It is very simplistic, but it is kind of comical. It does look kind of funny. At first glance, it looks a bit drab because it's all so beige and brown, and it's not a very colorful game, especially the backs of the cards. But I do feel that it kind of fits the style or the theme that they are going for. So, I mean, I guess it fits. At first glance, I thought, well, is this a game I'm going to like just from looking at the box? But I do. So definitely this is not a book to judge by its cover. So the artwork is all right. I think it does fit the theme. So the theme here is, of course, that you're all gangsters during the Prohibition in the United States, where you have to get rid of all of your booze, because otherwise the FBI is going to get you and you're going to go to jail, and you don't want that. So you want to get rid of all of your booze, preferably slip it to the other families, and hopefully you will have the least points, and once you reach 7 or less you can say Omerta, and then everybody reveals their cards. So does the theme work for that? It kind of does. The theme is very loose and could have been a different number of things, I guess. But since you're doing everything blind, everything is secret, everything is hidden, you do have that feeling of, I need to keep everything secret and I need to remember what they have. So there's a lot of sneaky stuff going on. So I feel that that fits the theme. I also like that all the characters do fit the theme as well, because you have like the getaway driver, you have an alibi, you have a snitch, you have the gangsters, of course, the lady, and I particularly like the mama, la mama, because that makes me think like when you have this card, you can't play a turn, but other people can also not target you that turn. So it's basically this gangster has gone off to eat dinner with the mama and nobody better bother them because, you know, there's worse things than the mafia. There's their mothers. So that's pretty funny, I think. And so yeah, the theme, I think, does work for this. Most important is, of course, the gameplay. Like you've seen in the rules explanation, this is a memory game, so you need to remember your cards. But the fun part of this game is, of course, messing with the other players. Playing a card that mixes up their cards, so when they finally have memorized all of their cards, they don't know where they are anymore, and you might want to get rid of a high value card, but where is it now? And you can gamble, but you could play away your low value cards instead of the high value card, and that's just fun to see happen when somebody's thinking, I know I have a high one in here somewhere, I think it's this, and then they play that, and it's the one, and everybody at the table just bursts out in laughter, because that is the fun part of this game, trying to remember and trying to, you know, mess with the other players. And it's also a game of thinking about when to play a certain card. If you know you have, for example, the driver or the snitch, when can you play them? When would be a good time to do it? And when somebody plays a card, of course, you can also, when it's your turn, not just draw a card from the stack, but you can also choose to draw from the discard pile. So that's a lot of fun. It's also a lot of fun with the alibi in the game. That's 0 points. You definitely want that one. When somebody has this card and the rest of the players know it, this is going to be the target for snatching that card away constantly. So that's a lot of fun as well. So all of these cards have these different effects, and it's just a lot of fun thinking about when am I going to use this, who am I going to use them on. That's also a lot of fun. There's also the mole that lets you look at one of your cards in secret, so you can check out what you have and remember where it is. But when somebody plays this and discards it, then it's usually that the next player will pick up that card as well if they need to and look at their card. So this card gets picked up from the discard pile a lot and then immediately played, so people have a chance to look at least one of their cards. So that's a lot of fun as well. So I do enjoy that. It's a very quick game. It's a fun game. There's a lot of take that in this game. And that just makes the game a lot of fun, a lighthearted, you know, mess with the other players, mess with your friends kind of game. And there's guaranteed to be a lot of laughter when playing this game. The replayability is pretty high. Now you're playing a number of rounds equal to the number of players. So if you're playing this with 4 players, you're going to play 4 rounds. And after that, you might say, well, this has been great. This was enough. But if you're playing with just 3 players, for example, and you can play this up to 5, I believe. So yeah, 3 to 5 players. With 3 players, it's over a lot quicker, of course, because you only play 3 rounds. With 5 players, it takes a bit longer. But I found that 3 or 4 players is optimal for us, for our group, but 5 players still works, just takes a little bit longer. It doesn't overstay its welcome though, because it is a pretty quick game, and I would rather, you know, play another game, certainly with 3 players, right after finishing a game, because it's just that much fun. So the replayability in my book is pretty good. The language dependency, there is some language dependency, of course, but even though these cards do have their abilities, all these characters written on them, this is just a really short description of what the card does, because all of these characters are described in the rule leaflet, and you get this in 4 languages. So once you know what they do, you don't need to remember what's on the cards anymore. You just need to, it's just a reminder, just a little help that reminds you, oh yes, this card did that, and the more detailed description is in here. I did find, however, that the Dutch translation had a couple of translating errors in it. That were pretty obvious and pretty bad. Not a lot, but about 5, I think, that I found that made me laugh and that I shared with the players, and they were like, okay, we better check how it actually works in the English rules. So I would suggest Helvetiq to give that a second look and fix those errors. And but otherwise, it is done really well, and there is little to no language dependency if you have a translated set of the rules. So all in all, I really did enjoy this game, giving it a big thumbs up. I also like that it's so compact, so you can bring it to wherever you go easily, and that is a big plus as well. All right, I'd like to thank Helvetiq for giving me a copy to review. That is very much appreciated. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And please check out my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description below or the icon at the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.